welcome to today's episode of this Organized Life podcast. I'm your host, Lori Palau, and today is our special Thanksgiving Day episode. So if you are listening to this in real time, happy Thanksgiving, everybody. I hope you are enjoying some time with your loved ones, friends, family, what have you. And I appreciate you popping in your headphones to join me today. This is always an episode for me that I like to do solo because it's just a time for me to express my own gratitude for you guys, give some reflection on what the things that are on my mind. And as I was preparing for this episode, I really wasn't sure what direction I wanted to go. And then something happened in my personal life, and I'm going to share it with you. And it really lend itself very organically to what I want to talk about today. So unfortunately, a couple of weeks ago, a very, very, very dear friend of mine named Rick Hall passed away unexpectedly. He was 54 years old and shocked a lot of people that unfortunately he passed away. Rick had a huge love of life and a huge impact on every single person that he touched. And as a matter of fact, I was going back through the archives, and Rick was a guest on this Organized Life back in, it may have been April of 2020. It was right after it was in the midst of the pandemic, right when everything started happening. I'm going to link to it in our show notes. It was episode 178 that he was on. And it was such a fun episode. I loved it. And he loved being a guest on the show. So I wanted to, or I am making this episode a tribute to Rick. And I think it's so fitting because Rick lived life to the fullest. And when we think about Thanksgiving and what we're thankful for, Rick is the epitome of that. And even though his life was cut abruptly short, unexpectedly, he left an impact on every single person that he touched. And I would love to be able to share some lessons that I learned from Rick and that I would like to pass on to you. So here we go. All right. So the first thing, which is something that I do, which is to practice gratitude. So back in 2018, I made this a daily practice. So for all of you guys out there who've been with me for a while, you may have known this, but I think it was 2018, I decided that I was going to do a 365-day gratitude project. And I did it on Instagram at the time, on my personal page, not on the Simply Be Organized page, but on the Lori Palau page. And I had to come up with something different, no repeats for 365 days. And what it taught me was, because again, it started off really easy. I had like all this low hanging fruit, but then as time went on, some days seemed harder than others to find gratitude. If you were having a really crappy day, whether it was personally or professionally or whatever, but it caused me this level of intentionality to really think about what was important to me in that moment. And sometimes even the smallest little nugget had a huge impact. And so one of the things that I've learned since that time, since doing my gratitude project, was changing my language of things. So if you want to start practicing gratitude, whether you do it intentionally, whether you're writing it down in a journal or tracking it on social media or just living it in your life, one simple thing that you can do is change your language from I have to I get to. So instead of saying I have to work out, I get to work out, or I have to make dinner, I get to make dinner. And that little tweak in language has a huge impact in your mindset. So if that's something that you find that you're constantly being negative or looking at the glass half empty, or you're surrounded by people that are bringing you down, just think about your language and what that is putting out there. So the more that you can start to shift that, it will actually, and I'm not a scientist, so don't ask me the specifics, but it will trigger something in your brain. So if I don't feel like doing something, if I say I get to do it, that to me gives me that motivation to want to move forward. So that's that. Okay, second thing, which I am really going to continue to work towards, and this is a huge lesson that I learned from Rick, is about being present, which is something that we all struggle with in this world that we are constantly bombarded with distractions, whether it's social media or work or emails or kids tugging at us or whatever it is. Being present with the people that you're with is getting tougher and tougher. And all of the people that I know that knew Rick know that when you were with him, he made you feel like you were the only person in the room. And that is something that is that's like a life goal, because I know that there are times where I am looking for somebody's attention and their head's in their phone. And I've been guilty of being in that on the other side. But when you are able to shut out the outside noise, close the computer, close the device, turn off the TV, and really have a one-on-one conversation and give that person that you are communicating with your undivided attention, it means you value them and their time. And there is an unspoken sense of connection that we feel when people are present. And a lot of times we kind of put it off thinking, well, I'm going to multitask. I'm going to do all these things. I'm going to get done quicker. And obviously I talk a lot about productivity and efficiency, but sometimes slowing down and just being present is really what's most important. And so things that you could do if you, and if you're watching this on YouTube, I have literally a whole list. So I'm looking down. So if you see me with my head down, that's what I'm doing. A practical tip for being present is, again, something as simple as putting your phone away at the dinner table or if you're with somebody. And one of the things that I hear a lot of people say is, well, I'm taking care of my aging parents, or I have my kids at home. What if they need me? What I tell people in those situations, if you're going to be out of pocket for an extended period of time, tell whoever is in charge that if you need me, call me, because I'm not going to be looking at my phone. And I've done this before. I'm going to be going out with this person. I will have my phone in my bag. So if you text me, I'm not going to see it. If it's an emergency and you need me, call me, because I will pick up a phone call. But that is a great way for you to not have to have your phone at the table face down, because again, we can't unhear the notification. So it's really a great tool to just say, let's kick it old school. Let's go back to calls and let's be present. So that's something that I think is really important. The third thing is doing something selfless, right? I'm grateful for the opportunity to be able to do things for other people, whether it's putting this podcast out there, whether it's sharing tips, whether it's making somebody a meal, whether it is whatever it is, you could fill in the blank, it doesn't matter. And I think a lot of times doing things selflessly turns into people being a martyr. And that's not what we're talking about here, people. We're not talking about the mom that wears all the hats and drops everything for every single person in her life and then does not have time to put her own oxygen mask on. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is doing something for somebody else that will make their life a little bit better. And it doesn't have to be adding something else to your to-do list. And that's the beautiful thing. So it could be just you're online at Starbucks and you want to buy somebody's coffee that's in front of you or behind you. You're already there. Doesn't matter. You can do that. Or let's see, what else do I have written down? Bringing a meal to somebody. So you're cooking dinner and you know that, your friend's spouse is traveling out of town. So you make a double batch of your meal and then you just put it in a Tupperware and bring it over and drop it off to them. So I think there are little things that we can do that don't necessarily add to our own to-do list because we're already doing them, but we can just incorporate other people. And again, it's not about being a martyr and saying, I'm doing this so that, you know, I'm waving this flag of how great I am. It's about putting other people first. And there is a psychological benefit for when we do something selflessly, not selfishly, selflessly, how that impacts other people. And again, that's something that I just would see Rick do on a daily basis, dropping in, helping out. We don't live in the same state, so he wasn't necessarily doing it for me intentionally, but for the people that were in his world, whether it was, picking up their kids or doing something, like he was just always there showing up. And I think that's really, really important, which leads me to the next one, which is really prioritizing people over things. And again, doesn't mean that has to be an either or. It doesn't mean that you have to be a minimalist and not have things, but really prioritizing people. And that's something that Rick did. And that's something that I try to talk about all the time on This Organized Life. Again, I'm not saying you have to get rid of all your stuff, but if your goal is really to have meaningful relationships, which I think is what we all crave at the end of the day, our stuff isn't going to give us our meaning. It's the people in our lives, the people that we can impact and that who can impact us. And especially during the holiday season, being surrounded by the people that matter to us. That is really what's most important. And so I see this a lot when it comes to the organization piece, where people start to feel like they judge themselves of, I don't want to necessarily have somebody over because my house isn't, air quotes, perfect, or I'm not as organized here. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, yes, if that's something that's bothering you, we can work towards that. We can start to try to put some parameters and practices into place to get you to that level of, and enjoying your space and getting rid of the clutter and all of those things. But prioritizing your people, that is really what this is about. That's how, the purpose, like, why have an organized life if you're not going to prioritize your relationships? And it was really, really, I think back to the times where, life was crazy, but I just called up a girlfriend and said, hey, why don't you just come over and split a bottle of wine with me? And we just sat on my back porch and drank a bottle of wine. And yes, is there something else I could have been doing that would have been more, productive? Again, air quotes, maybe. But at that moment in time, that was what was most meaningful for me. And so giving yourself that grace and that permission to prioritize those people, which again leads me into, my final big, my big message, which is that relationships are the core of everything. Relationships matter. And as people, we are built for community and connection, and our stuff is never going to replace that. And so when I talk to people that think, oh, if I just had this organized closet, or I just had this Pinterest worthy pantry, or whatever it is, that's going to make me happy. It's not. Yes. Is that temporarily? Like, of course, who doesn't like the look of something beautiful? I'm not saying that, but it's not a replacement for relationships. And so being mindful to not sacrifice relationships for these other things and really prioritizing that. And that's something that, Rick did intuitively, and I encourage all of you to do it. And here's how you can do it. How can you prioritize relationships, especially if you're busy, especially if you've got jobs and kids and being pulled in a million different directions? Doesn't have to be anything epic. Telling somebody that you love them a lot is one thing Rick did. Whenever I talked to him, love you, sis. That was it. Love you, sis. Just reminding you that person matters. Giving somebody a hug. Now, I know not everybody's huggers, but for people that love physical touch, especially if that's your love language, just giving somebody a hug and just saying, I'm here for you. I value you. You matter to me. Like that is huge. So you could do that. Um, for sometimes writing somebody a letter, that really is another way that you could sit down and tell somebody um, that they are important to you. So again, you don't have to physically be around somebody to let them know. I had the pleasure this year of going on a trip with my college roommates, and we all live in different states and we're spread out all over. And it was wonderful that we were able to get in the same room together and hug and laugh and do all of these things. But just even dropping them a handwritten note. But even if that's too much, shoot them a text, leave them a voicemail, let somebody know that you value them. That is so important. And that is something that, again, I looked back after this past couple of weeks with my friend passing away, and there was this common thread on this Facebook group that everybody was sharing their stories about him, and it was really about how nobody talked about how organized they did joke about his OCD because he does have that. And I'm sure that's what people would say about me as well. But people weren't fixated on that. They were fixated on how he made them feel. And I think for all of us, that's really what matters to us, is how somebody makes you feel. That's the legacy that you want to live. And you are able to do that when you aren't cluttered with stuff and when you aren't bogged down by all of these other things that are weighing you down. I mean, life is fragile, people. We never are guaranteed for tomorrow. And I'm saying this as an opportunity for you guys to say, what am I thankful for today? What are the things and the people in my life that matter? And am I living my life in accordance to that? And hopefully the answer is yes. And guess what? If it's not, it's never too late to start. It's never too late to start to prioritize these things. And so, I spent some time over the past week writing down all these different things that I think are important, and things that are important to me, things that I learned from Rick, and ways that I want to continue to show up in the world. And at the end of the day, I encourage each and every one of you to be authentic to who you are. And that is such a key piece. For me, I am somebody who craves order and organization, and I make no bones about that. And I was fortunate enough to be able to turn that into a business and now share the nuggets of inspiration with all of you out there where you might be struggling. But whatever your own God-given superpower is, use it. Be honest with who you are. Surround yourself with the people who will honor you and love you for who you are, and figure out the value that you can bring, because everybody's got those special superpowers within themselves. And it's so easy to get caught up in our to-do lists that we lose sight of that. So I want to encourage all of you on this Thanksgiving holiday season to really express your appreciation, whether it's in person, over the phone, text, letter, whatever, to the people who matter for you, or matter to you, I should say. And for all of you guys out there, I am really, really grateful that you're in my podcast community, that you're in my social media community, in my real life community. If you're listening out there, most of my real life friends don't listen to the show, but that's okay. But again, we want to hear from you. So thank you for tuning in. I hope that your holiday season is all that you want it to be, and we're here for you. So until next week, I'm Lori Palau. Peace out.